Good morning, Kahal Kadosh, Shavua Tov Mevorach. Today, Erev Rosh Chodesh Kislev, the 29th day of Heshvan, the 16th day of November 2020. We say welcome back to the Kahal Kadosh for the 11 o'clock Monday Pirke Abot class. Today's class dedicated for the Refuah Shelema of Miriam Batriba, Michael Abraham ben Dalia Miriam, Jorge Gabriel ben Selma, Shimon ben Gladys, Simcha bat Esther, among the Holim of all of Am Israel. May Hashem send them refuah shelema. El na refanana lahem, el na refanana lahem, el na refanana lahem. Echeni rason, ben Omar, amen. We continue with the Mishnah, third chapter. Rabbi Ishmael of our Mishnah is the famous Hacham who writes the rulings of Talmudic learning, which is part of our daily prayers in the area of Korbanot right before Hodu. And he writes, Rabbi Ishmael Omer, Bishlosh Esre Midot HaTorah Nidreshet. There are 13 rules of Talmudic learning which are applicable for the Torah, for the understanding of the Torah and the application of Halakha. He was a Habruta, and one that has a learning relationship with Rabbi Akiva, and many great things are said about him. And one of them is how everyone that came across the life of Rabbi Ishmael, he always greeted people respectfully and always welcomed people with a smile in his face. This is basically the message of today in the Mishnah Pirke Abot, according to my text. That will be Mishnah 16. Rabbi Ishmael Omer, Heve kal lerosh, be yielding to a superior. Benoach latishhoret, unpleasant to the young. Beheve mekabel et kol ha'adam besimcha, and be welcoming to every person with happiness. Short Mishnah, but I believe a Mishnah that is fully loaded of beautiful lessons of kavod haberiot, of respecting people, respecting the old, the young, and in between. So for that, let's go quickly to the Pirush of Rabbeinu Obadiah of Aventura, and it says, Heve kal larosh, be yielding to a superior, lifnei adam gadol zaken, beyoshev berosh yeshiva, in front of someone that is older and wiser, be swift in serving him, meaning to say, to understand and to respect the zekenim, benoach latishhoret, and even someone that is younger than you but has great chokhmah also comes to the kavod, beheve mekabel et kol ha'adam besimcha, and welcome everyone with a smile, etc. Let's read quickly the different pirushim. It says, we need to take care of the zekenim. Zekenim, although means the concept of zekana, the Gemara in Kiddushin tells us that zaken means someone that acquired wisdom throughout life, and wisdom can be acquired in many ways. One of them is actual life experience. The longer the person lives, Be'ezat Hashem, the more life experience they have. That is true. But there is another type of zaken. Zekana chokhmah, a person that acquires the wisdom of the Torah. Here the Mishnah, I believe, is referring to someone that is of age. And it says, Benoach latishhoret, and it says that someone that is younger than you, I understand the mitzvah of honoring the elders. It's actually mitzvah ta'aseh from the Torah, mipene seva takum, due to aging you stand up. What happens when an older person comes in? We stand up out of kavod. Or what happens if you're sitting in the public bus and an elderly person comes in? What do we usually do? We stand up. Doesn't mean that we travel on the public bus, but usually that's the human nature, and the recheres determines that this is the way that we act. But what about someone that is younger than us? So the Mefarshim explain in this Mishnah that not because someone is younger and we may be older, so the level of kavod can be minimized. The Bishmael, it's moving to the idea of every person must be respected. And I believe that we mentioned this in one of the classes last week, discussing how every person has a tselem Elokim. Every person has a godly element in their existence. Otherwise, they will not exist as humans, etc. So that by itself, it's enough to give the person the proper respect. בהווה מקבל את כל האדם בשמחה. And greet everyone with happiness. Now, if the only lesson of this Mishnah is this sentence, I think that we achieve a lot. How important is to greet people in a happy fashion? Let's read the commentaries on this Mishnah, which are interesting enough, are a bit long, but very relevant and very easy to understand. Welcome everybody with joy. Any person that comes your way, Zaken, Sa'ir, old, young, Hacham, a wise man, or Hediot, a simple person, Tekabel oto besimcha, welcome the person with happiness. If you remember a few chapters back, the Mishnah in the name of Shammai says, Besever panim yafot, with a pleasant face. What's the difference? Happiness and a pleasant face. So the Rambam, Maimonides, says that this is a loftier level of respect. To smile, perhaps that's the sever panim yafot, could be a plastic smile, a mechanic smile. You smile, you become serious immediately. Happiness, it's warmer. You smile and the smile becomes almost contagious in a good way, or at least you give a hug to the person. Today we don't for social distancing, but basically you understand what I'm trying to say. Now, and the Midrash Shmuel explains, שגם בינך לבין חברך, this is not only when we greet people, but even with our friends, someone that we see on a regular basis, perhaps it means to say, our interaction should be simcha and tov lev. It shouldn't be external only. It should also be internalization of this love and this respect. It goes even further from the Me'am Lo'ez. The Me'am Lo'ez, right, I just had it, right here. The Me'am Lo'ez explains Besimcha. It says that a person must have an important quality in the life. And this quality is called Me'urav Im Habberiyot. Me'urav Im Habberiyot means being able to interact with people. What does that mean? So the Me'am Lo'ez explains that a person should speak to another human being in a respectful way, not in a condescending way or in a belittling way. Sometimes people allow themselves the liberty of speaking to khadames or valet or simple workers in a very negative way that even employers, regretfully, not here, Baruch Hashem, thank God, but throughout history, we have heard how employers treat their employees, or sometimes how they speak in a way that يعني, they are right below Hashem. And Rabbeinu Me'am Lo'ez writes, and it says that even David HaMelech, when he will speak to people, he will say, Shema'uni ahi, listen my brother. Even though that the person that David HaMelech is talking to is not the biological brother of David, but just for being a Yehudi, calls him an ahi. Not only that, a deeper explanation, it goes to the concept of simcha. It says as follows, that there is a mitzvah known as the mitzvah of levaya. I want to clarify. Levaya is the halachic word in the way that people, God forbid, talk about a burial. In America, the community calls the mitzvah. The mitzvah. But in other parts of the world, this is called levaya. The literal meaning of levaya means to escort someone. There is a mitzvah of levaya that has nothing to do with burial, but is the mitzvah of escorting a guest out of the house. There is such a thing. You invited a guest to your house. Now the guest wants to leave. You cannot just tell him, okay, the door is there, open the door and make sure to lock it after you walk out. God forbid. It says the Me'am Lo'ez, it says, Mekabel Oreach, a person that welcomes a guest to the home. You serve him, you make him feel good. This is an interesting topic that we discussed a few weeks ago when we came across the topic of Birkat HaOreach in the Birkat HaMazon, the famous blessing that the guest gives to the host. And we explained from the Pelei Yoez in the topic of Achnasat Orchim. We discussed this back in the Perashah when Abraham Avinu, as we know, was a master in welcoming guests. And we discussed how the host must behave towards the guest. And we discussed how the guest must behave himself when he's a guest in someone's home. And we say two things. That number one, the guest should have words of praise and gratitude, to be makir tov, to be thankful for the opportunity that he has of being a guest in someone's home. And we also learn that the host should not burden the guest with his problems. In other words, you invited someone to eat a Shabbat meal at home, or a Yom Tov meal at home, or a Rosh Chodesh meal like tonight or tomorrow, which is a great concept, Seudat Rosh Chodesh. Don't ruin the Seudah. Because when you talk about headaches and tribulations and afflictions that you may experience in life, how do you think that the guest that came to your home thinking to have a nice Shabbat meal suddenly became a psychiatry session or psychological session? This is the idea what the Pelei Yoez rather talks about in the concept of Orchim. Now, you need to talk to your friend and you tell him, maybe you come and join me for dinner and we'll talk. That's a whole different story. But my suggestion will be, don't do this type of meals or this type of conversation, nor on Shabbat, nor on Yom Tov, nor on Rosh Chodesh. Because those are times in the life of the person that they carry a certain level of Kedusha, but also a certain level of holiness and happiness. Again, I'm in favor of a person listening to somebody else's problem. That's what I do often. Baruch Hashem, I will try to guide and help people with Hashem's help in the right direction, etc. But when it comes to the guests, says the Me'am Lo'ez, after you finish feeding and serving the guest, now you have another mitzvah. What is this mitzvah? The mitzvah of melaveh. Melavehu bedarko. You walk a few feet, even 6 feet out of your home or your apartment. That's called a beautiful thing. That's the reason why on Mosai Shabbat Kodesh, when we make the Seudah of Mosai Shabbat, how do we call that Seudah? Melave Malka, the escorting of the queen. Like we welcome the Shabbat with a beautiful meal with the Seudah, so we also say goodbye to the Shabbat with the Seudah. Hence the same Lashon. The escort of human remains, it's called Levaya. Hamavdil, the escort of a guest out of the home, it's called Levaya. And the escorting of Mosai Shabbat Seudah Revi'it, it's called Melave Malka. Beautiful. And it says, what is the benefit of a person making the guest happy, honoring the guest, serving the guest, and making the meal enjoyable, and on top of that, the guest is escorted by the Baal Bayit. Zoche le'ahara elyona. This mitzvah, which has many compartments, but is the mitzvah of welcoming guests, it automatically qualifies the host to receive a godly life, a godly element of life, a godly light, perhaps we can say. Now, where do we learn this from? So it says, Avraham Avinu, ve'Avraham holech imam leshalecham. Avraham Avinu, in Perashat Vayera, that he was eagerly waiting for the arrival of guests. Avraham Avinu escorts the guests after they finish eating and they get ready to leave the home. Listen, remember the beginning of that parasha? Avraham Avinu was on the 3rd day of the Berit Milah. He was in pain. And yet Avraham Avinu goes the extra mile and escorts the guest. And therefore, what is the next situation? God says, Amchase ani me Avraham asher anochi oseh, asher ani oseh. Can I cover myself from Avraham about my decision? What is this verse referring to? Hashem had in mind to destroy Sodom, Ba'amorah, the 5 cities that eventually became destroyed. But on the other hand, these cities were part of the package of Eretz Canaan. So hold on. On one hand, you are telling Abraham, I'm giving you this land for you and your descendants. But on the other hand, later on, you come and you say, it's like you sold your house as is. Okay, you sign the contract, you get paid. And then you come to the new buyer and say, no, that was not included, that was not included, that was not included. That's not the way things work. And that's exactly what God did to Abraham. God says, Amchase ani me Abraham. Can I hide from Abraham what I'm planning to do? What the chain reaction of the verses? First, the verse talks about Levaya, escorting the guest, and then talks about Hashem communicating with Avraham Avinu, alav shalom. What a beautiful message that the Mishnah of today brings to us. Let me see if there is anything else to add. Okay. Rabbi Abraham Azulai, in the beginning of this Mishnah, says, Heve kal larosh. So according to Rabbeinu Obadiah of Bartenura, be yielding to a superior. Meaning to say, the older have wisdom, they have knowledge, they have understanding, they have experience. Respect them, honor them, serve them if necessary, etc. Rabbeinu Avraham Azulai explains, Heve kal larosh. He says, when it comes to positions of leadership, be light, yani run away from them. Now you may say, but hold on, if everybody's going to run away from positions of leadership, who is going to lead? Who is going to be the rabbi? Who's going to be the president? Who's going to be the mesader? Yani have nothing. You are correct. You are correct. But I'll tell you from my end, I think what this Mishnah is telling us is that if you can avoid being the head, better. But if you need to be the head or you happen to be the head, heve kal. Be an easy-going person, especially in the field of the rabbinate, the way we mentioned before. Just one second. And it says, also, those who are in the positions of leadership do not become arrogant and interact with the congregation and understand that dealing with the congregation or with the kahal is not easy. We saw this from Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, alav shalom, 40 years of leadership of the Jewish people. How many headaches we gave Moshe Rabbeinu throughout our history. And therefore, it says here that Moshe Rabbeinu was able to withstand Am Israel. Despite isolated situations that we really pushed the buttons of Moshe Rabbeinu, etc. And that's why he says that once you are in the position of leadership, Heve mekabel kol adam besimcha. Now, when you are the president of the synagogue, or you're a committee member of the synagogue, or you're in a position of leadership in the synagogue, including the rabbinate, welcome people warmly. Warmly. That melts the ice. It shortens the distance. It gives the recipient a nice warm welcome. And I don't mean due to the 80 degrees or 75 degrees that we have today. The warmth that I'm referring to, it's literally the warmth of the neshama. Belo bepanim zoafot. And not with a long face. We already discussed back when Yosef Sadiq in jail, and he sees the butler and the baker, and he sees in the face, they see in the face that they are the face of Tisha B'Av. And therefore it says, if you're going to act yourself in the respectful way, and greeting everybody respectfully and properly, and let's clarify, here is not limited to the rabbinate or somebody that happens to have a position of leadership in a synagogue or in a community program, etc. This is for life. And it says, She'en evdel ben ashir ve'ani. Don't make the difference between a wealthy and the poor, nichbad varash, the destitute, or someone that is very honorable, zekenim une'arim. And doesn't matter if it's old, doesn't matter if it's young. And especially, shorter than usual class, but I have to, Baruch Hashem, we have an early wedding today that I must attend and participate in the ceremony. So I need to reshuffle things around a bit. Be'ezat Hashem, Irbu Semachot be'Yisrael. But on the other hand, also from a parenting perspective, it's very, very important for parents to apply this particular Mishnah, because children, as we know, they listen to the parents, they learn from the parents, they absorb from the parents. And therefore, if they hear that a rabbi or mehillah, that a father, if a father, a child rather hears that a father is talking bad or wrong or inappropriate about a teacher or about a rabbi or about a community, etc., what do you think the message is to the ears of the child? That maybe Torah is not good, maybe the teacher doesn't know nothing, maybe he knows more than anyone else, and these kind of statements, God forbid, are very dangerous for the development and growth of any of our beautiful children. My dear friends, I wish everybody to have a Shavua Tov u'Mevorach, Chodesh Tov b'Siman Tov tonight, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, and we'll see each other, Be'ezat Hashem, 9:15 tomorrow via itorah.com, and being Tuesday, Spanish class, 10:30, 10:30 in itorah.com. שבוע טוב ומבורך to everybody.